Welcome to High Oracle's Reiki Spiritual Healing Channel. And we are talking about those attachments in our lives and how we are supposed to remove those attachments. A lot of the information that I have been sharing with you is supposed to be given to you while you were younger. It is supposed to be given to you by your parents. And when there is a disruption in the transfer of power, and we're talking about, the power, the abilities, the understanding, the innate ability, the knowing that you were supposed to receive from your parents. When you do not get that type of information, when the information has been interrupted by the entity, then it's just like the holy books that God is going to send someone to remind you, because like I say, this is innate knowledge where God has already testified and made your souls testify to the oneness of God, the monotheism. Okay, so we have to make sure that we're understanding what's going on when the entities have been attached to us. I have been letting you know how they were attached to you and how they were attached in our lives, different higher spirits and demonic spirits. And what we have to be able to do now, once we know that they are in our lives, that they have been sent to us, that they have been dispatched by uncles, aunts, mothers, fathers, and sometimes even siblings will hold that type of energy as energy vampires. We want to be able to have an understanding of how to get rid of that negative energy, how to seek the relief of that negative energy. And what I have been training my clients is that there wasn't only just apostles that were sent, there were also priests that were sent. And that is what we are seeing with Moses and Aaron. You have an apostle and you have a priest. In the line of apostles, you will have many priests. You will have people that are in this lineage that are supposed to be among the churches, that are supposed to be in the synagogues, that are supposed to be in the masjid, in order to alleviate the negative attacks that are upon our lives. Especially when we are receiving the same dreams over and over, when we're experiencing the same patterns of our parents. It may be in a different lineage, but it's definitely the same. You're receiving the same rejection, the rejection that your parents went through, or you're receiving the same cycles that your grandparents went through. And you're able to understand this type of, attack that this entity is, trying to get you to remind you of something that happened in the past, remind you of who you are. This will also go on with movies, where the entity is trying to remind you of who you are so that you can engage in spiritual warfare, or you will submit to it. So I wanted to give you these types of understandings from the holy books, that there are certain prophets that were sent with certain prayers, that were sent with certain knowledge of how to remove negative energy from certain situations. So when you are dealing with an entity that has subdued your father, and you are going through those same types of attacks with, women, you're being married 2 or 3 times. You're not able to commit to a relationship. You want 2 or 3 relationships, or you could have diseases of alcohol. You could have physical diseases in your body from these relationships that you have not attended to your situation. You have not been responsible for your children because of addictions in your life or the addiction to women. Then these are all enemies that and attachments that have been attacking you, and they have been attacking your parents. And whether you are the spiritual curse breaker in your family or not, those entities will remain until someone, break those entities and deport them back to either the person that sent them out where they came from, or who is holding that energy, or they are deported to hell. Me, myself, I do not like to, send people, negative energy. I do not like to return a demonic entity to the person that it came from. I like to deport them to hell, because that's going to solve everything. That's going to solve, the problem where you don't have to have this cycle in another generation. That entity will be, permanently deleted from your life and the people that are in the past. And so that means that it will ultimately, be fatal for those who sent out that energy. It will be fatal for those who are holding that energy knowingly. Those who have, caused the struggle and strife up on the chosen ones, knowingly, intentionally. Okay? So when we are dealing with these types of entities, we want to make sure that we are, praying in the way that the prophets prayed. We want to make sure that we're praying, and the spiritual ritual when you're dealing with certain prophets, like I was saying on the topic today, that Job was one of those prophets that got direct downloads and direct knowledge of what was going on, that he was being attacked by the entity. God spoke to him and gave him direct knowledge of what to do to relieve the attacks upon his health, upon his life. And God confirmed that he was going to restore him. So when we are dealing with these types of entities in our life, we have to be able to discern what kind of entity it is. You have to be able to know, who you're fighting, what you're fighting in order to win. You have to know if your fathers fought these entities, or if they were, if they were allowed to take over their lives and enter the person as a narcissist, a demonic attachment, or if they were born with it. So these are the ways that we can see and have discernment about these entities that are in our lives that is causing disaster, health problems, rejection, disobedience in your children. And like I said, there are different types of prophets that were sent. In order for you to understand, you can use the prayers of these prophets. They have spiritual authority over certain situations, but you have to know what kind of situation you're going through. You have to know what kind of demonic entity is attached to the situation or has been dispatched to the situation, and you have to know how to use the prayers as a spiritual defense, along with a spiritual ritual, a spiritual warfare that was given to that specific prophet. And that is why I use Job as an entity, as a way to, break the entity off of his life. That is why I use King David as a way that, as an example for you to see how to break the entity and deport the entities out of your life. Okay, so we now understand that these types of rituals were supposed to be, given to certain ones of you as spiritual power, spiritual authority, a transfer of knowledge from the spiritual realm. Some of you have certain aspects, but the aspects of how to, use the prayers, how to use the spiritual knowledge, how to, stand in prayer, how to be sincere in your prayer. That type of knowledge has been cut off from a lot of you. And this is what I have been teaching you about the spiritual realm. So we have people that will go through attacks from, and let's use an air spirit as an example. Let's use, an earth spirit as an example, where they will not be able to, settle with anyone. They will not be able to settle in a house. So when you're having these two types of spirits, attack a person, you will always have, some health problems. You will have breathing problems. You will have people, sending negative entities to your feet. You will have people that have sent negative entities to your health. You will have mental health problems, so that you understand that spirits can carry other spirits with them. And when they are enter you as a weakened state, it's not just about being naive. When you're naive, then, you are allowing someone to attach to you because of the love, because of their title. So when you are, aware that these entities are in a person, and you start to fight them with the holy word of God, then you have to know the types of prayers that is, sent through that prophet for that situation. And this is what a lot of you are not using against these entities in your life. And this is what I have been directing my clients. This is what I have been directing my followers, that, when you're using a spiritual defense, and you are under attack by these types of negative entities, then you will understand that you can, banish these demons out of your life by fasting and praying. You can banish these negative energies by having a connection to God. It creates an automatic spiritual defense when you are prostrating, when you're on your knees, when you are bowing before God, when you are talking to God about the problem, when you are talking to God about the situation, when you expect God's faith, the faith in God, when you expect the change and you have faith in God, then you understand that the negative entity, the situation, the blockages, the black magic, it will be removed from you. So I wanted you to have this understanding of what's going on in your life, why you're having some issues, with these recurring cycles, with these recurring patterns in your life. Because these entities have been dispatched to you. They are stubborn demons in your life, and they will need to be removed with a spiritual method, a spiritual ritual to alleviate, to relieve you of the health problems, to alleviate the mental attacks, to sever the demonic attachments to you that have been dispatched by people in your life, or by, situations in your family, in your bloodline. And I hope that you have received this message. Please like, share, and subscribe to me over all of my platforms. You can book your one-on-one life coaching sessions. If you're having these problems with attacks upon your life from demonic entities, from people in your family, you can reach out to me in the description below. Please like, share, and subscribe to me over all of my platforms. Book your one-on-one life coaching sessions or your video chat sessions. Donate to me. I'm High Oracle, Reiki Spiritual Healer. Assalamu alaikum.